Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Ken Goodpaster. I'm the Uber judge, as they call it. It means that I moonlight as a taxi driver. And I'm going to be organizing the judging part of the session for the International Business Ethics Case Competition. I'm going to ask our judges to introduce themselves. My own background is that I have taught business ethics for almost 45 years and taught at Notre Dame. I've taught at the Harvard Business School, and I've taught at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota. I'd like to present our in-person judge and can introduce himself.
Yeah, I'm Greg Mayer. I'm a patent attorney. I'm based in Tempe, Arizona, but originally from the Chicago area. And my background is engineering. I was an aerospace engineer for a couple of years and then went to law school, became a patent attorney. And, ethics is near and dear to my heart. And as you may know, if you've been involved in patents, patent attorneys have a duty of candor to the patent office. So you have to tell them everything you know, whether it's good or bad. So ethics is a really important thing for my profession. So happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Greg. And our two online judges will introduce themselves, please.
I'll go first then. Karen Moore. I am an attorney. I've been working in-house in corporations, leading compliance and ethics programs for more years than I care to mention. Presently, I am teaching a introduction to corporate compliance at Fordham Law School for their Masters of Legal Studies program.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. There are way too many lawyers on this panel. Incidentally, my name is Ryan Carella, and I'm a lawyer. I primarily practice education law and entertainment law. I'm the general counsel for Doral College, and I also teach business ethics at the University of Miami and at Doral College. I've been working with this competition in varying capacities as a judge and as a coach for teams for about a decade now, and think this is probably one of the best things you can do as a co-curricular activity as a college student. So I think it's great that this group is involved.
Can't say how grateful we are for your participation and your time. It's what makes this competition unique in the country. We have practitioners who are very savvy about what business ethics looks like in the real world. And it makes it much more effective competition for our student participants. And with that, I want to present the platform for the presentation we're about to hear from the team from University of Massachusetts Amherst, the graduate team. Here's the platform for the presentation. In this part of the competition, you are taking on a fictional business identity. So this is for the sake of the judges. And assigning a fictional business identity to the judges. Please make sure everyone knows who you are and who they are before you begin. You will have 25 minutes, and I'll be the timekeeper here, with a 5-minute cushion to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem, and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all 3 counts. During this time, teams will be uninterrupted. When you are finished, the judges will ask you questions for 20 minutes. During the Q&A, both you and the judges stay in the character that you have assigned. After the Q&A, the judges will give you feedback outside the role that you've assigned to them. Some important things to keep in mind: the ethical aspects of your analysis are the most important part. However, these should be described in a simple, practical, common sense fashion. Using technical, philosophical terminology or basing your argument on religious or theological grounds will be considered a serious weakness. Similarly, any member of the team reading his or her part will also be considered a major mistake, although you may use notes. During this presentation, every member of the team must have some sort of speaking role. And with that as a platform, I turn the floor over to the team from the University of Massachusetts Amherst.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rohini, and we are from Space Avengers Consulting. And apologies that my other colleagues could not make it today due to other commitments. But we are here because we believe in the extraordinary vision of SpaceX. We are here and we all believe in a future where humans are not just confined to Earth, but they are an extraplanetary species. We are here because we believe in SpaceX. Let us take a moment to appreciate the marvel of engineering and the spirit of exploration that SpaceX embodies. From the Falcon 9 rocket to the Dragon spacecraft or the ambitious Starship project, SpaceX has shown and what can be achieved in the space exploration. But as we reach to the stars, let's not forget that we have to take care of our own backyard, which is the space around our planet. So here in today's presentation, we are going to discuss about space debris pollution and orbital sustainability. So today we'll be talking about some background information and diving deep into the problem of space debris, our recommendations for your company, the legal, ethical, and the financial dimensions of the problem, and the last will be the question and answers. So what exactly is space debris? Space debris are any objects in the space which no longer serve a useful function. At present, there are around 36,500 objects which are greater than the size of 10 centimeter, around 1 million objects which are greater than 1 centimeter and less than 10 centimeter. And as you can see, the first rocket was launched in the year 1957, and since then till date, there have been around 6,500 rocket launches. And it is estimated that there are at least 640 collisions resulting in fragmentation every year. And as we can see in the image, you can see that around the Earth, there has been hardly any space debris. But as the years progress, it has been increasing continuously from 2005 to 2018. The sources of space debris are mainly dead spacecraft, lost equipment, boosters, which are different stages of the rocket, and anti-satellite weapons. And what impact these space debris has on our environment, it results in loss of unique applications and functionalities. We have satellites like the ISS, which are helping us in communications, and it also poses a risk to human life, both on Earth as well as in space. It interrupts Earth sciences and climate research. It affects the magnetic field. It causes light pollution. It causes environmental pollution, etc. So these are some notable incidents. Your company, SpaceX, has created space debris. So we can see that we have the Falcon 9 rocket. There was a breach in the helium system during the static fire test. And there was also uncontrolled re-entry in Washington of the Falcon 9 rocket. And we can also see that debris had spread across 385 acres of land near the Boca Chica Park. And there was also incidents of Crew 1 craft where a 3-meter piece of space junk fell onto property in Australia. And in space, we can see that we have a Dragon spacecraft where due to the eruptions from the sun, most of the satellites were destroyed, and now they can't be brought back on their own. They don't have the ability to re-enter on its own. And also parts of trunk have survived re-entry onto the Earth's atmosphere. We also have mission debris, mission-related debris, part of the Starship spacecraft exploded shortly after stage separation during a test flight. And SpaceX, your company plans to build as many as 42,000 satellites as a mega constellation. But assuming there's a 3% error rate and there's a loss rate, it can result into a significant number of defunctioning satellites over time, along with the damage to the ozone layer, and regarding which we'll be covering in the next slides. So we'll talk about the characterization. So as you can see, we have the Earth here, and we have two major orbits, which is the lower Earth orbit and the geostationary orbit. And the lower Earth orbit is the orbit which is less than 1,200 miles. And you might think, what do we have? We are on Earth, and how does it matter to us? But the debris which is rotating around the Earth is rotating at a speeds of around 22,000 miles per hour. And collisions at this speed can create 2,000 large debris fragments. And imagine there is so much debris out there in space that it leads to a cascading effect, which is known as a Kessler syndrome. This is in theory as of now, but we are not far away that it might become a nightmare in the future. Also, we spoke about the lower Earth orbit. We also have the geostationary orbit, which is the GEO. And at this altitude, air drag is less significant, and hence orbital decay takes much longer. So when we came up with our recommendations, we made sure that they align with the Sustainable Development Goals. Here we have Goal 13, talking about climate action, and Goal 17, talking about the partnership for the goals. So moving on to our recommendations. First, we recommend SpaceX to, they must immediately deorbit about 100 of their operational first generation Starlink satellites, because your company has already identified that there's a bug in those satellites and they might become defunctional in the future, but they are still up there. So we recommend immediate deorbiting of those satellites. The second, we recommend SpaceX must consider applying additional technologies and measures to facilitate emergency disposal in case of inability to maintain control. So this could mean that many of, as we saw in previously, that there were many satellites which could not be brought back to Earth because of eruptions from the sun. So SpaceX should come up with some technology where we can see that there's immediate disposable ability in the satellite itself. And if it's not possible to do it immediately, we recommend SpaceX taking help of other companies which specialize only in the active space debris removal, companies such as Astroscale and Clear Labs, etc. So the space debris can be brought back using different methods. Some of them are using a harpoon, using a catapult, using deployable sails, and using laser. So what laser does is it changes the orbit of the satellite. So slowly it re-enters into the Earth's atmosphere. So our next recommendation is based on collision avoidance and maneuverability. So SpaceX must ensure that active maneuverability is existing on all its missions, and not only all its missions, but also till the end of life for any satellites which are above the altitude of 375 kilometers, and also use propulsion systems for smaller satellites. And SpaceX should also work towards designing and development of reusable and recyclable materials. And this could not only reduce the potential for space debris, but also foster a culture of responsible space operations. Going next is data sharing and traffic management in orbit. SpaceX must answer all reasonable and legitimate requests for space traffic management coordination in a timely manner. SpaceX should consider the applicability of an autonomous operating system where they can give out information of their constellation so that it kind of gives a clearance for you guys give a clearance to other companies that your systems are not being affected or etc. And if these are implemented, they should be interoperable, and you should be able to share data with other missions as well. The next recommendation, SpaceX should implement regular third-party audits to ensure that their operational processes don't undergo any further breaches like we previously spoke about, like the helium breach which took place. And our last recommendation would be, we recommend SpaceX to explore use of sustainable materials in the spacecraft design. So using biodegradable materials helps safely re-enter of the satellite into the Earth's atmosphere so that it does not damage the ozone layer. As we can see that Japan is already set to launch its first wooden satellite to combat the space pollution, which it is doing in this summer. So we recommend SpaceX to also explore such sustainable materials. So our recommendations were not only just technical, we have made sure that they are legally compliant as well. So talking about the legal dimensions. So talking about the legal dimensions, we have environmental concerns and lawsuits. Sorry. Yeah, environmental groups and a tribe in Texas have already asking the court to revoke the license of, suspend the license of SpaceX because, which was granted by the FAA. And these groups claim that the satellite, the launch has, like as you can see on the image here, we have a launch pad just right here, but you can see how much the area was affected. And the debris was spread around at least 385 acres of land. And we can also see that there is 2.69 acres of area which was burned. And legal experts also suggest that anybody who can prove that there was a personal injury, they can file a case on your company. And the next, we talk about your company has already been fined by the FAA around $1,750,000 because it failed to provide collision avoidance information before the Falcon 9 launch. Until date from 2019, there have been around 50,000 collision avoidance maneuvers, and it is estimated that there will be around 1 million maneuvers every 6 months by 2028. So we don't want your company to go into more legal lawsuits and pay a hefty fines. Also, your company must follow a list of guidelines which have been set by different committees. So like we can see the Outer Space Treaty, we can see the FCC rules, we can see the Space Act, we can see the NEPA. So like talking about the Outer Space Treaty, it says that space is a shared resource and it should be available safely and effectively to all the human beings, to all of the humanity. So your company has to be regulatory compliant and follow all these, not just these, there are many other guidelines. They should follow all these to avoid any further lawsuits. Also, your company will have to pay more fines if actual collision takes place with other satellites or actually new debris is created. We can see that there already exists an example that FCC has issued the company Dish a penalty of $150,000 because it failed to remove the space debris, a satellite, which was in its last stage. It failed to remove it from its orbit, and the company was fined. And we don't want your company also to go through the same thing. And this is a special mention about the ozone layer. Your company plans on launching around 42,000 satellites, and it is said that it will re-enter into the Earth's atmosphere safely. But as per the European Space Agency, when a satellite re-enters into the Earth orbit, it releases chemicals such as aluminium, which get converted into aluminium oxide. And when they re-enter into the Earth's atmosphere, they deplete the ozone layer. We can see an example of another country called Schneider Steel, which has already paid a heavy penalty, and because it failed to implement compliance measures. And speaking about the Starlink 42,000 constellation, we can see that with the first generation of Starlink, we can expect around 2.2 tons of dead satellite re-entering to the Earth's atmosphere every year. So our recommendations are not only legally compliant, but financially viable as well. So we have estimated that your company will have to spend around $200 million for different aspects to be regulatory compliant, which includes design measures, which is a 108 million one-time fee, and for surveillance and tracking, 30 million, maneuvering satellites, around 20 million, replacing missions, 35, and decommissioning satellites, around 8 million. So the total comes up around $200 million. The second is liability and insurance. We have estimated that your company has to be have insurance against all the lawsuits and for all the procedures and projects. So we have estimated around $97 million that it will cost you. And last, for the operational delays and the losses, we have estimated around $65 million for any losses due to technical difficulties or things like that. So as you can see, the total comes up around $363 million. And this is very less compared to your company's market share, which is around staggering $180 billion. So it makes sense for your company to invest in all those recommendations that we have provided, because you guys are not only a company in space, you are the stewards of future space explorations. You set an example for other nations, other companies to follow. It's not just about business. It's also about coming together as a community, making space safe for other future generations as well. And not only legally compliant and financially viable, we have made sure that our recommendations are ethically sound as well. So space, as you know, is a shared resource, and as per the Outer Space Treaty, it is a shared resource, and And creation of space debris is a violation of this principle. And as you can see that the creation of space debris causes harm to humans, not only on Earth and in space as well. It affects the sustainability. It can lead to Kessler syndrome, and it can have environmental impact on different habitats. And it can lead to further collisions and harm other missions of other companies as well. And it's not only that, it also acts as a threat to astronauts. And it is our moral responsibility to not only reduce the creation of space debris, but also to take measures to reduce the space debris, which is already taking place right now. Talking about implementation and challenges and risk mitigation. We know that it's not easy that we just give our recommendations today and things that are taking place from tomorrow. We know that there will be challenges with technical feasibility, economic viability, and coordination with among other stakeholders. But we are here because we believe in SpaceX. We believe that you are a community of not only dreamers, you are a community of dreamers, a community of explorers, a community of innovators. So it might take some time to get over these things, because there are companies who are already taking part exclusively in the space debris mitigation methods. So we can, as of now, in the short term, work with those companies, but in the future also do R&D and develop those technologies in-house. And economic viability, this is regarding the funds for your company. As we have seen that more and more companies are coming up, and we can see that the space has become a commercialized market. So the prices of these things will surely go down. And coordination among stakeholders, we might think that it is difficult to coordinate with like many companies or around the world. There are so many projects going on. But we also have an example of ISS, where it is a project done by many countries together. So it is not something that is impossible, but it will surely take some time. And these are our 2 cents for your company, SpaceX. As we reach for the stars, let's ensure the path remains clear for all who follow. Together, we can secure a sustainable future in space. And these were our references. And the floor is now open for questions and discussions.
Thank you very much. You did that with 1 minute, 59 seconds to spare. Good time. Now the floor will be open for 20 minutes, starting now, for the judges to stay in their role as members of the board of SpaceX, as you have placed us, to respond to your presentation. And let me just kick it off with one question and let the judges take it from there. A lot of what you have presented to us with all of the investment that you've asked us to make represents presumably a departure from what we're already doing, an improvement upon what we're already doing. But you haven't said a whole lot about what we're already doing. And I'm curious about that, because if you're going to go somewhere, you need to know where you are to begin with. Can't get there from here unless you know where here is. Can can you say any more about where here is, what we're already doing on some of these fronts so that we can see what the incremental change would be?
We already have Falcon 9 rockets, which are, as I spoke about, the incidents here. Your company is already doing well with the Falcon 9 rockets, with the Dragon spacecraft, with the Starship projects. These are some of the very great projects, and you also plan on making humanity a interplanetary species. So that is the vision of SpaceX, and we all believe in that, and that's why we are already here. I'm sorry. I don't have that on the slide.
Okay, let's hear from our online judges first. Ryan, perhaps, would you go first?
Certainly. I think I can speak for the whole board to say how thrilled we are with how thorough and well-researched of a presentation this is. Obviously, we want to make sure that as a company, we are good space citizens and with a firm understanding of how we don't own this particular real estate. We are sharing it with all of the other players in this space, and we certainly owe a debt, or certainly owe an obligation to future generations who will be exploring this same area, to not mess it up too much for them going forward. And we certainly understand our ethical duties there, but I also feel like we should just have some awareness of the current state of things. We certainly aren't the dirtiest space polluter. Space has been filled with junk orbiting the planet for decades now. TV satellites, parts from old rockets, and things like that. It's already a pretty messy place, and I feel like even if we were to fully implement your measures and make sure that we really properly take care of what we are leaving behind, it would be a drop in the bucket relative to what is already there. So, is there a risk that we're making an investment in trying to, clean things up that's going to wind up being, not particularly measurably helpful? Like we're picking up a few pieces of trash in what's kind of already, for lack of a better word, a dump. And so, is there a risk that what we're doing is just going to be window dressing as opposed to something that's actually going to have a measurable and beneficial effect? And if that's the case, then how much of our effort should be spent not just on our own individual activities as a company in this area, but how much should we be trying to advocate for greater change throughout the industry, and maybe advocating for policy change to try to, clean up everything that's around the orbit, not just the stuff that we've done?
We all have heard of the saying that prevention is better than cure. So what we are aiming to convey to you is that if we take measures now, we are going to first of all act as stewards into our future space explorations. People are going to look at people and other organizations, other nations. We are setting an example for them, saying that we are not only just about profits, we also care about humanity. We care about not polluting the environment just for our profits. So first of all, we are trying to set an example over there. And we already have in theory called Kessler syndrome, in which you don't, you look into the sky now, you see stars and satellites. Tomorrow, you don't want to end up looking at tangled web of debris. And it actually makes the future space explorations impossible. So we don't want to run into that. So by taking measures now, we not only set an example, but also we make space a shared resource for all of humanity. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, to a significant extent. I'm still just trying to struggle with, even if we, keep our side of the street clean, how much we're actually going to be able to solve this greater problem that you've articulated of, how polluted the area outside our planet is getting. I think I'll let the other judges weigh in here, or the other board members, I should say, weigh in here.
Yeah, I'll actually add another point. Like we have other companies like Astroscale who are just like, their main aim is to reduce the space debris. So SpaceX can also have another venture where they are charging other companies as well for reducing their space debris and charge them. And this can also venture into another revenue for the company.
Karen?
Yes, so first of all, thank you for that. There's certainly a lot to think about, and thank you for carrying the presentation on your own. It would have been nice to hear from the rest of the team, but you represented all of their views, I see. I do have quite a few questions. I had a number of cost questions, which I think you've now allayed when you put into perspective our total outlay for implementing your recommendations, which comes out at under 400 million, compared to our operating costs. That is a compelling expenditure. And so my questions are really not on the actual dollar costs, but on some of the other risks and some of the recommendations you presented. And I have so many questions, but let me focus first on the recommendations you have about data sharing and working with other stakeholders, because it raised a few concerns for me. First of all, have you considered the risk that in sharing data or mandating the sharing of data, we're going to be exposing some of our company proprietary information to public view, or at least the view of our competitors? What about the value of that data, which can be monetized in other ways? I mean, how are we securing that? And on the legislative side, if we're working with stakeholders who are also competitors, have you considered any of the kind of antitrust issues that may arise from coordinating or collaborating with our competitors in this field?
So your company, SpaceX, has already got a fine of around $1,750,000 because it failed to share information about the Falcon 9 before the launch. So we don't want your company to run into such penalties or legal lawsuits again. So here we have to think of space as a shared space, and it's just not about one company making its profits. So here we have to come together as a community, as we are all humans. It's just not about us, it's about everybody. So we should be in a position to answer only those requests which are reasonable and legitimate, is what I would say.
Okay, I still have concerns there about, we have to be sustainable as a company, and answering all, as you have here on your slide, all reasonable and legitimate requests, and certainly compliance with regulatory mandated disclosures we must do. But I'm still not as convinced on the should do. But say we say that we will work with our competitors. What about the antitrust concern? How do we manage that?
I'm sorry, could you come again?
Yes, I'm still, let's say we do openly share data beyond the mandated regulatory requirements, and we work with our competitors to implement some of these concerns in some sort of a collective action or private-public partnership. How do we address the antitrust or anti-competition exposure that is just generally present when you work with your competitors?
So as of now, we just have guidelines on how to go about our projects. We don't have an actual like organization setting rules. We just have guidelines. So it's our responsibility as a company, like your responsibility as a company, because by doing that, you set an example for the future other companies as well, and the people have more trust in you, and this can show that you are not only about profits and you care about humanity. So I think coming to your question, this is something your company has to take a step forward and set an example as stewards of future space explorations. So that is what we can say on that.
If I may, Craig?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. When you mentioned the costs, what was the time frame? I think there was a $97 million insurance and liability cost. What was the time frame for those expenditures?
That information was mostly about Starlink satellites, the Starlink project. So we have estimated that was like annual charges.
Okay.
So we have kind of, sorry.
That seems like a lot of money. I think following up on Ryan's question, isn't this really the government's job to keep the streets clean, so to speak? Because, you know, we're only one player in this realm of satellites. And if nobody else is doing it, it's like a group action problem. Why should we have to take the heavy lift? Why can't the government deal with this? Don't they already track all this debris?
As of now, we have committees doing monitoring and tracking different space debris, but we don't have like somebody setting rules or anything, because space is a shared space, and like as per the Outer Space Treaty, no nation or no company can have saying rights that this is mine or that is yours. Like we have come to an agreement already in the Outer Space Treaty that that's not how it's going to take place. So we have like it's a shared space, so we have to like we recommend you follow our recommendations so that you set an example as not only for yourself but for other future generations to come. So that's our take.
Okay, and then just one more question. This Kessler syndrome. So let's say certain orbital altitude, the Kessler syndrome plays its course like complete. Then isn't it just dust and we don't have to worry about it? And then we just go to a different orbital level to avoid the dust cloud that eventually happens. I'm just curious what the sort of end result if the Kessler syndrome were to occur.
So as of now, we can't just say that we just ended up making the whole space into space debris, because it ends up making the future space explorations impossible to take place. And not only that, we have like satellites like ISS on which we depend for weather forecasts or communication or other things. So we will experience like as you can see, like in the Simpsons, they say like they might come at a time where there's no internet. So because there's no communications and there's a lot of debris and there's a lot of collisions, so that can actually take place. It's in theory as of now, so that can actually take place if we don't take measures as of now. I hope that answers your question.
No, yeah, it does. Thank you.
If I may, we have about 4 minutes left. I want to return to a question that Judge Ryan asked and frame it again. If I understood him, he was worried that if we take these initiatives on our own initiative and other companies do not, our initiative would be A, taking a lot of expense, and B, possibly ineffective because others would not follow our example. You're relying very heavily on other people following our example. And if they don't follow our example, then our example is ineffective. And are we caught in a dilemma that some people have called the tragedy of the commons, where we try to do something in the commons, the space, shared space, and we find out that we're trapped. We can't do it alone, and we need somebody to manage the commons, and we can't manage it alone. What are your philosophical thoughts about that?
So on that, we would say that the valuation of your company is around $186 billion, and the total space economy, the valuation comes to the space market is around $630 billion as of now, and it is estimated that it will grow to around $1.8 trillion by 2035. So it's not just about taking measures to reduce it so that we get a good impression on our company. It's also, you can also venture and take advantage of it, like for other companies such as Astroscale or Clear Labs. What they are doing is actually helping other companies. Their main focus is just for removal of the space debris. So SpaceX can also venture into doing removal of space debris and actually generate revenue from that. So this would be our take on it.
I'd like to piggyback on that though and ask whether taking a leading role, even if others don't follow, doesn't that buy us a little bit more credibility with, you mentioned the SDGs, for example, so with the UN, with other nation states, with current regulators in terms of our voice? Does that help amplify our voice? Are we purchasing that, so to speak?
Sorry, could you please repeat? I didn't get you.
Yeah, and just in short, I'm wondering to just counter the tragedy of the commons concern is whether being the leader, even where others don't follow, puts us in a better and more influential position as regards future sustainability goal discussions with the United Nations, other regulations maybe that would be proposed by NGOs or by nation states.
Yeah, so I have a point to say about that. So when you get a license from FCC for your launches, so in that we have a deal that we speak about deorbiting the satellites again into the Earth's atmosphere, and we don't leave it up there. As you can see that FCC has already fined a penalty for Dish company. So, and you can see that there have been cases where people have, tried to sue the company for revoking their license. So we don't want to run into those lawsuits again. So it's better we take steps now and think of it as a not only just for profits but for the whole space community, for all of humanity. And take steps and not just think about profits, but also as what we are giving to the world back. That would be our take on that.
Well, our time in our roles is at a close. And thank you, presenter, and thank you, judges, for playing your role as board members of SpaceX. We now have 20 minutes for us to step outside of our roles and to have a conversation with our presenter about the presentation itself and about your responses. And let's go in reverse order here, and we'll start with Greg, if you're willing, Greg.
Sure.
And what are your thoughts to share with the presenter?
So Rohini, just the delivery was really good. I do this thing. We have a work group where I work, this sort of extracurricular. It's called Postmasters. And one of the things we think about is the stalling words like or and you had a little bit of that, but overall, especially since you had to do this all by yourself, I thought you did an amazing job on the delivery. I think some of the financials I don't know that it's really apples to apples, so to speak, to compare the costs, like you have on this slide, the costs of being compliant with market capitalization, because companies like SpaceX and Tesla, their market capitalization is not really tied to their sales or revenue. So I think it would have been more compelling if you compared the costs to the revenues and, you know, maybe said, well, if you have a catastrophic failure, you're going to lose a lot of revenue, obviously, because you're going to lose spacecraft. And so I think it would have been better to look at sort of profit and loss kind of point of view rather than comparing the cost of the market capitalization. And I thought your slides were great. I happen to have been exposed to sustainability development goals, but I don't think but that's a UN thing, right? I think it would have been good on that slide just to say the UN sustainability goals, just to spell that out, because maybe not everybody's familiar with that. I just happened to have run across it recently. So overall, I thought you did a great job, and especially, like I said, when you had no teammates here to help you. Thanks.
Karen.
Yes, so I have a number of comments and suggestions, some of them personal and some of them on the presentation. But first of all, you know, amazing job carrying this entire thing. I hope that your teammates are taking you out for a very expensive meal at some point to thank you. So great job, because it's a huge topic and a short amount of time. But a few things for you specifically. First of all, I'd like you to take you know, 5 steps to your right now and get away from being behind that desk, because that really looks like you're trying to hide. And you've got this great presence, and I think you should make it known. So don't stand behind a desk. Don't clasp your hands, which you did for almost the entire presentation. Use them to good effect to help illustrate or emphasize what you're talking about. I think small things like that will make a really big deal in delivering your message. There's quite a bit of slide reading, and your slides were very dense. So I think you might have benefited actually by presenting less material on the slide and then using your explanation to try and draw people's attention and keep people's attention on you and what you're saying, rather than the slides themselves. And in a general board situation, you would have provided, you know, materials in advance that the board would have looked at. And I realize you're in an artificial situation here. But as for the slides themselves, besides being dense, I think that you should reconsider the order of them to make them more compelling. Very close to the end, you said you are a company, I even wrote it down, you're a company of dreamers, explorers, and innovators. I would put that right up front. Get this board in the mindset of like, right, I'm not going to get bogged down in some of the real technicalities here. I'm now remembering what is our big mission statement. And so I would start with that rather than ending with it. The slides jumped right into, well, you started with this kind of high aspirational that was not connected to SpaceX, kind of like we should be responsible for space. But then you jumped right into really, really technical details. And other than, you know, we've got one person here with a good engineering background, the board probably doesn't have as much of that background. And so I think that you might have left some of that aside. I wrote down also explain the SDG for context so people understand. The regulatory regime, I think, was a little bit weak there because there are some laws. You kind of jumped right into cases and costs, which maybe isn't the best place to start. And then I had 2 more comments, and let me hand it on to somebody else. Oh yeah, on the cost, because ultimately the board is going to be considering the total costs here. You've got this one time, and then you have this annual, and then I think as one of the other judges said, you know, place that against revenue, potential return on investment. I think you missed an opportunity for some good charts here to, first of all, minimize the cost, to show, look, there's a one-time outlay of 116 million, but then you're only in, you know, a 85 million annual cost. How could that maybe be shared in collective action? That, you know, that kind of thing too. I think there could have been a couple of compelling chart slides here to help illustrate this better for the board. But overall, you know, really great job with a very complicated topic, and thank you. I learned a lot.
Thank you, Karen, very much. Ryan.
The problem with going last is that your colleagues always do such a good job of talking about all the excellent things you did in that presentation. So all I can do is just echo a few of them. This is one of the better researched presentations I've ever seen. This was a very highly technical area of ethical analysis. You know, you really have to, it's a lot of emerging law, a lot of emerging science, and I thought you did a very capable job with it, particularly because I would imagine that most people who have to give a presentation like this are going to have, you know, extremely credentialed science backgrounds with a lot of science experience. And the fact that you handled this subject matter so capably as a college student is very impressive and very inspiring. I am optimistic for the future of our world. So, you know, I mean, in addition to some of the other comments that my clients have said about the presentation, I think one thing I can add is, you know, in the years that I've done IBECC, I've come to find that the strongest presentations, the strongest topics tend to be ones that present a genuine ethical dilemma as opposed to just a problem that needs to be solved. And you know that there's a subtle distinction there, but I think it makes a difference between a good IBECC presentation and the best one. So this is a great presentation of a problem to be solved, right? Any company that's polluting should stop polluting, and it's not a particularly controversial view. But what I didn't see in this presentation was a true ethical dilemma. I did not hear from you a countervailing ethical imperative that makes this like an ethically difficult decision to make, right? Like companies should clean up when they pollute. Like, what's the counter argument? What makes this an ethically challenging question? And there are ways that you could have framed it to make it a true ethical dilemma. Like, for example, this is a significant problem and we have to address it. If addressing it means shutting down production and scrubbing all launches, basically like cutting off the revenue for this company until we solve the problem, is it worth that? Now that's an ethical dilemma because now you're really balancing the needs of different stakeholders and really having to wrestle with a tough question that, you know, the fate of the company depends on. You know, that's an ethical challenge that I think inspires debate that the company really has to reason with and could count on your ethical analysis as well as our financial and your financial and legal analysis to help us sort through that question. And so when you're looking at topics in the future, when you do this again in subsequent years, and I hope that you do, try to find topics that are a true ethical dilemma, that have competing ethical imperatives, as opposed to just a problem that a company needs to solve.
And I would second that point, and I would also add that there's an ethical dilemma sitting right in front of us that you can grab onto instantly. And that is the dilemma that the tragedy of the commons dilemma. How can this company all by itself solve this problem? And the answer is it can't. It has to have some kind of overarching help from a power greater than itself. And that's a dilemma for capitalism. If you're going to have a free market, you're going to have to get some coordination from outside of this company as well. Now that's a dilemma. And it seems to me you could exploit that in your presentation if you chose to. Is there a reason why you did this presentation all by yourself?
My other colleagues could not, were not able to make it due to some commitments. But this is my last semester, so I wanted to make the most of it. So even if it's me, I just wanted to do something.
I see. So there were others involved in the preparation of all of this material.
Yes.
Because the research was superb. And I was curious to know why it wasn't a team presenting besides yourself.
So you're graduating soon? Oh, congratulations. What's your degree going to be in?
Business analytics.
Oh.
Nice work.
Yeah.
And I'm going to adjourn us because we have another.
9:30, right? Yeah.
Into the room. But thank you all, and thank you to the judges as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good job, really good job.